Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. Is Thomas O'Neill 35 years of age and he still hasn't got sense?
No.
Feels like he should be about 22.
Well, sense and Thomas O'Neill aren't two things that
Maybe
necessarily
not.
go together, it has to be said.
Now, that made me look as if I was 117 the way I did that. Actually, 117-year-old.
It did.
Yeah.
Well, look, he definitely
That I have tea and buns at night. That's what it made me look like. But I mean, seriously, 35 years of age.
Well, you see, he's still a young man, and in reality, you're saying that because he's literally been written about since...
He's around forever.
Yeah, because literally since the age of 18, when he became an adult legally, we've been writing about him. And the reason we have is because of his role in one of, like, I really could safely say possibly the most shocking rape case in the history of the state. People may or may not remember it, but just the sheer savagery involved, partly because 4 of the people involved in this rape case were teenagers. It happened in Cratloe Woods, down in County Clare. There was a tourist in the area with her boyfriend. She basically came across a group of young men. Thomas O'Neill was later described as the ringleader of this group. They had some interactions, asked her for a kiss, or something like that. She obviously tried to get rid of them.
But this couple sitting in a car or something?
They were sitting by a car in the woods, basically, and they then hit her. They hit your man. They had a number of weapons, including they were armed with like golf clubs and a screwdriver, I think, those sort of things. They hit her. They pushed your man into the boot, beat him before putting him in, locked him in the boot, opened up the boot periodically during the incident and beat him again. In the meantime, they pushed her into the back of the car and they all raped her. So, you know, if sometimes we look back, this is in 2004, seems a long time ago, and it is, but you know, Thomas O'Neill was 16 at that stage, and partly because of their age, I think it caused that kind of shock that, you know, there was a number of young men.
So how was he named? He was 18 by the time he hit the court,
So he was charged as an underage person, but because the case took a period of time to come to court, he was subsequently named because he was an adult when he was tried. That's the law. We heard the details. There was a number of other men convicted, but Thomas O'Neill was described as the ringleader. And if you hear some of the details, the man was pushed onto the bonnet before she was dragged into his car. O'Neill and the other 3 took turns raping her. The gang threatened to burn the car with the man inside it while they were raping the woman. They opened the boot of the car and assaulted the man a number of times with the golf club. The couple's ordeal, it said, lasted for a full hour and only ended when the man escaped from the boot of the car and flagged down a passing motorist. They all pled guilty to rape, and they also pleaded guilty to false imprisonment. So during the sentencing, Paul Carney, the very well-known judge at the time, described him as the ringleader and the director of operations and jailed him for 10 years. So, you know, a very, very notorious criminal. You know, you would think a pariah in society. But
what age was he when he got out? About 24, 25?
Maybe just, something like that. Maybe slightly older. But obviously a pariah to some people. I mean, you cannot think of somebody who become more of a pariah in normal society than a man who has committed a crime like that, of, you know, an horrendous sex crime. But in fact, when he got out, he was caught the eye of a young lady called April Collins. April Collins, of course, was Ger Dundon's girlfriend, and they had a number of kids together. And April Collins and Thomas O'Neill had been together before when they were young teenagers, and she had always described him as the love of her life and effectively the one that got away. Subsequently, she'd ended up with Ger Dundon, who was in and out of prison, obviously one of the Dundon brothers.
Another catch.
And during one of the periods when he was in prison, she struck up a relationship with Thomas O'Neill. And that...
She did 3 children with Dundon.
Yeah,
certainly when she was a young teenager. And she, he...
Well, he was not a catch either, but even beyond his criminal activities, and they were many, as he was a violent and abusive person towards her. So she struck up with Thomas O'Neill, and that had profound implications for the Dundon McCarthy gang, because April Collins was her father, Jimmy Collins Sr., was a well-known associate of the gang. She was linked in through all of these ways. And when Ger Dundon, when she broke up with him, he didn't take it well. His brothers were dragged in. Wayne and John were dragged in to effectively threaten her. Wayne threatened to take her kids and to raise them as his own. There was all sorts of problems, but basically, to cut a long story short, they started threatening the Collins family. The Collins family were no angels, and they had their own associates. And April Collins ultimately was so enamored with Thomas O'Neill that she did what was unthinkable at one stage and went state witness against the Dundons, and effectively, not single-handedly, but effectively brought an end to their reign of terror by giving information not just about the threat she received, but also about murders that she had heard about while she was with Ger.
Her evidence put away Wayne and John, but not Ger.
Not Ger.
Because Ger is actually the only one of the Dundon brothers.
Well, there's
one other brother who has
absolutely no involvement in crime.
But of the 4, shall we say, who are known Dundon brothers, Desi, Wayne, John, and himself, Ger, he's the only one who's kind of been in and out of prison as opposed to being serving a life sentence, because the others are, all 3 are on life.
All 3 are on life.
He has been in and out of the country. He has been doing a lot of work in England. He's currently in prison in the UK for a conviction for kidnapping. He was caught in the act of, he had held 2 businessmen he was trying to extort money, along with Cornelius Price, the late Cornelius Price, who was a leader of one side of the Drogheda feud. But he's been in and out of prison. Just remind me, if you can, where was Ger at the time that she was giving evidence? Was he floating around? Was he in and out of prison, or was he?
He was mostly in prison, but he was in and out on a sort of constant basis. He was served a lengthy sentence for intimidating a businessman, in which Jimmy in Ireland, in Limerick.
When was that?
Well, that was.
Remember?
I don't remember, but it was
because I was trying to. So he was in prison with Robbie Lawler.
He
befriended Robbie Lawler, and Robbie Lawler was released around. So he was in prison with Robbie Lawler between about 2016 and 2018.
Yeah.
And befriended him and became his protector.
Yeah.
Because Robbie Lawler was threatened in the prison system by Cornelius Price. And he sort of went to work as his security.
Yeah.
And he had worked in security for John Gilligan in the past.
Yeah.
Ger Dundon. He provided a service that he would move sort of high-profile criminals around. They would sometimes move around holding sites in the UK where they could lie low and be given protection for a fee. But he has been, I'd say he has...
Well, I mean,
a string of convictions.
Yeah, I mean, and he was
every time you turn around, he's either in or out of prison.
Yeah, no, he has 100 convictions, I think. Yeah, more than 100 convictions. So Ger Dundon obviously attended some of his brother's trials when April Collins gave evidence. Thomas O'Neill, in the meantime, was out and about. So, it's a very, very bizarre situation where you had 2 feuding camps, I suppose. Mm-hmm. One of them, which included Thomas O'Neill, which, traditionally, sex offenders and gangland don't mix. That somebody who had been convicted of a sex offence becomes a pariah in the criminal underworld. I mean, that not always, but quite regularly. But Thomas O'Neill has continued to become involved in criminal activities since his release. The reason we're talking about him is that he has just pled guilty to sale and supply of heroin, and one count of possession of cocaine for sale and supply as well. So he's remained.
Do you know the value of the amount he had?
They haven't given the value at that point, but like he's not a criminal mastermind, so it may not be.
He was caught with these drugs on Hyde Road,
yes.
which of course is where it just, he just lives behind that with April Collins, and the Dundon houses are on Hyde Road.
Yeah.
Everything happens down in Limerick Gangland in a very small little
but there have
block.
There's been these repeated tensions between various factions that remain on Hyde Road. Hyde Road is a sort of semi-main street, quite a long street with a couple of hundred houses. But the Collins, April Collins and her associates are on one end, and the Dundon McCarthy's are up the other end. And even in the last few months, there's been outbreaks of violence here and there. There's all these sort of feuds going on. It's pretty wild, and Thomas O'Neill is right in the mix of it. This sort of revolving door of prison. I mean, people like Thomas O'Neill, have been in and out, as we said, since. You're saying he's 35, but it's 20 years of writing about him in and out.
Well, we talk about criminals getting a bit of sense around the age of 35 to 40 when they start, thinking about their future and maybe just settling down a bit and running out of steam.
Yeah.
But not happening here, is it?
It's not happening here. And of course she, they got married, April Collins and Thomas O'Neill. They've continued to stay together. She left Hyde Road for a while, but has returned. She's, living there. There has to be a very sort of bizarre and slightly dangerous situation. But in fairness to April Collins,
be a bit eggy around the Isles of Liddle. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it could be. It could be. But April Collins has shown a certain backbone. It has to be said that many, many others in Irish history of the underworld have not. And the fact that they're living there is it is amazing. Thomas O'Neill has, he's continued to get in trouble. He was given a 6-month jail sentence for violent disorder there a couple of years ago. In court, he was described as having a propensity for violence. And it's ongoing. But April Collins is standing by her man nonetheless.
Okay. Well, look, thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.